This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Jim DeMint served as a senator from South Carolina, and then he went on to found and be chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. He's also the author of a new book, and it's entitled Saving America from Socialism. We welcome now Senator DeMint back to Bloomberg. Great to have you here, sir. So I want to start actually with the title of the book, because I think sometimes the words really make a difference. Socialism is one thing, and I think has a particular definition, control the means of production by the state. Social welfare is somewhat different. Do you draw a distinction between those two things?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, I think a free market system is important to create prosperity, and generally that works for the large majority of folks. The social welfare includes safety nets for folks for various reasons who could fall through the cracks. But what we've seen through history is that the free market system has done more to pull people out of poverty than any social welfare system that we've ever created. So, David, I think the dynamic we need to consider is if you're killing capitalism in order to provide more social welfare, those things work at opposite ends. And so it's not one or the other. But if you want prosperity that can take care of everyone, including the poor, then we need to make sure our free market economic system is working.
And in reading your book, Senator DeMint, one of the important points I took away from it is it's not just a matter of economics, it's a matter of freedom and personal freedom, going back to Hayek and people like that. Let's apply your analysis to the here and now, where we have a very unusual situation, I think we can agree, the pandemic leading to really the shutting down of the economy, where we're in a pretty deep recession right now trying to claw our way back out. Do you take issue with some of the actions that have been taken, either by Congress or the Fed, to try to support this economy right now, at least for the time being?
Well, my main issue is shutting down in the first place. I think we used worst-case scenario data about the health threat to shut down the largest economy in the world. It was supposed to be for 2 weeks to level the curve, in effect, which turned into 3 months, and still we have a number of states who are trying to stay closed. And the more you listen, the more you realize that healthy working-age Americans are at very little risk from this. We've got good data now, and so my issue is we cannot lock down the economy again. We can argue about what was done right or wrong in the first place, but to create worst-case scenarios as an excuse to shut down our government was a big problem. And I think what we've seen here, David, is a little glimpse of what happens when people who are in power use some crisis as an excuse to take control of our lives. If you sit down and think about it, for the last few months, we've had governors and mayors telling us whether we can open our business or not, which businesses are essential, who we can meet with, whether we can go to church, whether schools can open. I mean, this is a little glimpse of what it's like when we give government too much power. And I think what we've seen here is when folks, particularly those on the left, who have this excuse to take power, are more than willing to do it.
And certainly all of us don't want an overburdening government. We don't want to turn everything over to the government, which I really interpret as being socialism. But at the same time, when you have a virus that really crosses between people and goes around, don't you have to have some rules? Because the fact is, what you do in exercising your rights and your liberties might affect my well-being.
Yeah, exactly, and it's something we have to weigh. But I mean, there's little question now that we did overreact. I mean, we didn't know all the data in the beginning, but what worries me now is we have the data, particularly about school-age kids or kids in college. Very little risk of getting it, very little risk of being hospitalized, certainly very little risk of death. And we're still not responding properly on an economic perspective. What we're not doing, David, is balancing the risk. There could very well be, with all the spending and borrowing and printing of money, some economic failure point that we're not anticipating here. And I just don't think we can completely ignore the downside of closing down an economy and putting millions of people out of work. And we've had thousands, if not millions, of small businesses who have closed probably permanently. And so the damage here has got to be weighed. And we know the risk is primarily to folks over 80 who have very serious other health conditions, most of who've died have been in nursing care. We need to take care of those, Dave, but we don't need to apply the same restrictions on young people.
Right.
Because of olders. Now, that doesn't mean it's not simple. I mean, young people go visit older folks, but no one yet in the medical community has said, hey, if we stay home, we're not going to get it. They've told us from the beginning, you're likely to get it if you can get it, but we're just trying to delay it. The fact now is we've got plenty of hospital capacity. We know how to treat it better. The death rate is plummeting, although you don't hear about that. You just hear about infection rates. So I think there's been a lot of alarmists here, and I'm afraid most of it is just directed at the election.
Yeah, fascinating. It's a really interesting book, a very provocative book. And I'm delighted to say that the former senator from South Carolina, Jim DeMint, will be staying with us.